Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha King from the Center for Best Practices at No Kid Hungry on the innovation team. We're very excited to take you through this new resource today. While we're getting started, please feel free to put your name in the chat and tell us where you're calling in from. It's always great to see where people are joining us from. We'll get started in a few minutes. Let's see, Bozeman, Kentucky, Ozarks. Wonderful. Yeah, you can switch to the next slide. While everyone is introducing themselves, I just wanted to share some of the quotes that we got from you all when you were registering for the program today. Everything from wanting to build more cultural relevance into the school meals to engaging students and parents. And we do hope that indeed you will come away from this conversation with new ideas and a sense of how to use this tool to meet your district's priorities. I'm going to go over a few housekeeping things. And yes, please keep on sharing where you're coming from in the chat. On the housekeeping front, this webinar is being recorded and the slide deck will be shared with all of you afterwards. We will also have time at the end of the presentation to hear from you. So please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your page to submit some questions. Any questions we don't get to, we will try our hardest to follow up with you and answer. We have closed captioning available for this webinar, and if you have any technology or accessibility issues, please message Share Our Strength over chat, and my colleague Hannah will help troubleshoot. At the end of today's webinar, a brief survey will pop up in your browser window. Please take a moment to complete it. We review each and every response, and your feedback is really valuable for us as we continue to evolve this presentation and the materials within it. So now I'm seeing Tahoe, and so Washington, D.C. I'm based in Washington, D.C., so I'm excited to see hometown representation there. I think let's go ahead and get started. For those of you who are just joining, my name is Samantha King, and I'm with No Kid Hungry's Center for Best Practices team, and I focus on innovation. I am joined today by Holly Donovan, the Director of Program Innovation here at No Kid Hungry, and we will be taking you through this new resource today. Next slide, please. So what is the School Meals Design Guide? We are really excited to share this with you. The guide is an online hub for activities and tools that food and nutrition teams can use to make their meal programs more student and community centered. It provides guidance on how to use the principles of human-centered design to better understand your community and to come up with innovative ways to meet their needs. It was created by No Kid Hungry's Center for Best Practices with prototyping support from IDEO, a human-centered design firm, and guidance from a cohort of food and nutrition services directors from across the country. And it's really been inspired by so many other efforts in food system design, education design, and the like. I'm going to turn to Holly to talk a bit about why we've put this resource together. Great. Holly, next slide, please.
Great. So we created the School Meals Design Guide because we were hearing from school nutrition professionals who really wanted to make improvements to their meal programs that might make kids and caregivers more excited to participate in them, who want kids to really enjoy the food that's being served, and who might want to make meal service more efficient in some way. We heard from school nutrition professionals who really want to understand kids and caregivers' experiences with the programs, to figure out ways to get feedback from them and hear from them, and to have better methods for communicating to all stakeholders, students, caregivers, teachers, administrators, and who are also doing a million things every day to feed kids and operate their programs. So we put together this guide with a few things in mind. So first, we know that you're busy. So we wanted to create a toolkit that actually contained tools. So not just suggestions or recommendations, but tools that you all could use to take out of the toolkit and immediately put to use to better understand the needs and desires of communities and make some changes to reflect that. We also wanted to create tools that, if used, we hoped would lead to tangible, user-centered improvements that ultimately benefit the kids who participate in meal programs and the caregivers who are relying on your programs to feed their kids. And then as an innovation team, we were familiar with efforts in other sectors that use innovation and user experience methods to ensure that their operations are successful. This happens in tech all of the time, of course, in the restaurant industry and other corporations. But nothing like this has been developed for the professionals who are feeding our kids every day. So we really wanted to create something and thought you all deserved a nice user-friendly resource that helps you apply these methods and that recognizes you as the innovators that you really are. Next slide. So when we talk about innovation methods, we're usually talking about human-centered design. And for those of you who aren't familiar, it can be summed up as a creative problem-solving approach that centers the lived experiences of individuals and communities. One of the main goals of human-centered design is to get people to suspend what they think they already know about an issue, to ask questions and approach a problem from the point of view that you don't already know the answer, and with the openness that there's something to see or hear or understand that you've not fully understood before. And that process always starts with attempting to better understand the people who you're designing for. Next slide, and I'll hand it back over to Sam.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's do a quick orientation to the guide, and then we can try a few tools to leave you with today. So the guide includes 4 categories. The first 3 contain tools that have been specifically designed for key stakeholder groups, students, caregivers, and the broader school community. There's also a Human-Centered Design 101 section, which contains a selection of basic human-centered design tools that you can use to structure your design process if you wish. Hopefully you've had a chance to click around on the website. Right now, I'll just show you how to navigate to one of the downloadable tools. So from the home page, you can select the category that is of the greatest interest to you. And for the purposes of this introduction, let's just check out the Activating Students section. Okay. Scrolling down, you will see a variety of activities that we have created specifically for students. Let's look at Plug and Play brand. This activity originated with one of our food and nutrition services directors and has been adopted by others in the innovation cohort. The Plug and Play brand is something you could use to engage students in their very own school brand design effort, or you can use it to highlight new menu items created in partnership with students and caregivers. And as you can see here, each activity, if you scroll down, has instructions, suggested timing, materials, and a tool that you can download and edit based on your needs and preferences. For this activity, you can download a Canva template that you can customize and design stickers that you can put on foods or other items in the cafeteria. Let's go back to the presentation now. I want to stress that there's no one right way to use this guide. You can choose your own adventure, you can mix and match, use one tool or many tools, whatever is most useful to you and where you are in your progress. Next slide, please. Now let's sample a few of these activities and tools. There are 3 stages to human-centered design: inspiration, ideation, and implementation. And it is really a non-linear process, with new ideas diverging and converging again as you learn more and you try new things. The inspiration phase is when you are gathering information, getting feedback from students or caregivers, observing how students react to meal items, and so forth. There will be a lot of options for changes to consider at this stage. Ideation is when you come up with ideas to address the opportunities or challenges surfaced through your feedback gathering process. For instance, how might we change the packaging to better suit the needs of the youngest students? You can narrow the list of potential ideas to try so you're not taking on too much. Finally, implementation is when you are learning how your idea is affecting student behavior, you're making adjustments to your idea, and you're sharing back the impact. To give you a very quick picture of this structure, we will highlight 3 tools across 3 phases. The first one is learn through observation. Second, make sense of learnings and prioritize. And third is tell your story. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Before we start any effort, design effort, we highly recommend using the Getting Started tool on your own or as part of a team to help prioritize what issues you want to tackle. Here are a few of the reflection prompts from the tool. It might be fun for you all to take a few moments now to consider these and how you might use this with your team, students, or other stakeholders. Get out a pen or pencil and paper and capture your thoughts, and we'll use those materials again later. Holly, while they're reflecting on their own experiences and needs, what's a problem you might want to tackle?
Yeah, could you go to the next slide, Hannah? All right, so if I'm using this Getting Started tool and I'm thinking about a problem that I'm trying to solve, one problem I've heard from people that can be particularly demoralizing is maybe students who take the food, but then you're in there and you kind of notice that they're not necessarily eating all of the food, and maybe some of it ends up in the trash can. And obviously that doesn't feel good to see. And clearly you want students to eat the food that you're serving every day.
Yeah, makes sense. And I'm sure that this is top of mind to many of the folks on this webinar. Are there ways to break down that question or that problem a bit further?
Yeah, I think, the Getting Started tool says, like, is there a particular demographic? So if I'm in there and I'm in the cafeteria and I know something maybe about my town, maybe I would think like, I actually know that there's been a new immigrant population that's moved into the town recently. And I might notice this problem of the kids not eating the food across a lot of students, but maybe I observe that this is happening disproportionately with these new students who are coming in. So this is where I might just start to get curious, right? And think maybe it makes sense to reach out to engage or talk to these students in some way to better understand.
Yeah, I think I'd want to know, are the menu options okay? Or could it be that they are not aware of what is all available to them? It could be so many different things, and untangling these issues and opportunities can be the focus of a design effort. The third question, what are you hoping to achieve through your work with students? Participation is one critical outcome, but what other measures might you consider? Perhaps less food waste, more laughter. You can get creative here and learn which measures of impact are most important to your different stakeholders. Holly will now take us through Learn from Observation.
Great. All right, so let's take a look now at one of the tools that you can find on the site. This tool falls into the inspiration phase of the innovation process that Sam was talking about, and can help you understand the meal experience from a user perspective. And that means from the perspective of the kids who you're serving. So we're going to take a look at the ethnography tool. We sometimes also call it the observation tool, and we're going to actually practice it with the tool today. So you can do it from your home or office or wherever you are today. So to do ethnography is to observe people in a particular setting. For those of you who operate meal programs, you'll want to use the observation tool in the place where meal service is happening, and that's most likely going to be the school cafeteria. This is a place where you're all spending a lot of your time already. But now you're going in with this tool from the toolkit, and you're going in also with a state of mind where you might see things in a new way, and that might inspire new ideas or improvements. Okay, so this is the first page of the ethnography tool. Ideally, you would go to the site and you would print this off of the website. Today, we're going to look at it together as we go, and you can just take some notes on a separate sheet of paper. We also can't all be in a cafeteria with you today, so instead we're going to watch about 4.5 minutes of video from a school cafeteria. It's just B-roll from our video team. So when you actually do this, though, you would hopefully be able to watch an entire lunch or breakfast period. And it's also good to know that, of course, the camera has its own perspective, so you're not seeing everything the way that you would in person. So there are 4 pages here that represent the entirety of the tool. So Hannah, if you could just scroll through the next few really quickly, just so they can have a sense of the whole tool. This is the first page. That's the second, observation, then reflection, and then finally, the last one is future actions. Yeah, great. Thank you, Hannah. Now you can go back to the instructions again, but that gives you a sense of the template that you would be printing off. In real life, you'd read and do this on your own, but today I'm going to summarize the instructions for you to avoid the awkwardness of silent reading, and then we will get started. So what you would do is you would grab a pen or a pencil and the note-taking template that we just showed you. You would find an unobtrusive spot in the school cafeteria or another place where meals are being served, and you're going to observe for the duration of a breakfast or lunch period. Now, this is important. Instead of observing as an F&S director or another school nutrition professional, you're going to instead imagine yourself as a small child seeing this event for the first time. So a different mindset. You're going to write down everything that you see, hear, and smell. And when something says something worth noting, you'll write it down as accurately as possible. While taking the notes for this first part, just the observing, you're going to write it down without interpretation. So for instance, you might observe teenager slowly walks into the cafeteria, reads menu items, smiles, high fives friend, and says burritos today, yes, my favorite, rather than the kids came in feeling really excited about today's menu item. And then after the breakfast or lunch period is over, you're going to just take a few more notes to finish objectively writing down everything you observed. And then you're going to fill out the rest of the template. The next one, reflecting on what you saw, and then finally thinking about what changes your observation might inspire. So let's go ahead and go to the next page now. So what we're going to do right now is simply observe and record. The analysis and potential next steps come later. And so we are going to now go ahead and show 4.5 minutes of this video. And I just want you to practice doing that. So Hannah, if you could go ahead and show that video, and then we'll come back and continue talking about this.
No, this is his school. No, I'm saying we got Glory. Wait, we got Glory. Oh, okay.
No, man.
We need help. You got it?
No.
You need some help? Got it. There you go. All right, now open it up. Put it back. Yes, I am coming. Good job. Awesome. Let me see you try to open it up. Pull it, pull it. Nope, go with the arrow. But it's my good ice, it's not for your juice. It won't go in there. Don't say anything at all.
Great. Okay, go ahead and go now to the next slide, I think there, Hannah. Excellent. Okay, so finish, all of you out there, finish jotting down any final notes on what you observed. And now we're on the reflection part of this tool. So now is the time to try to make sense of what you just observed. So you'll start to think about, what was your interpretation or analysis of what you just observed? Did the kids seem to like the food? Did they enjoy the environment? Was service efficient? Did anything surprise you? Was anything particularly difficult or pleasant to see? What went well and what do you wish were different? Okay, so you all kind of jot this down out there wherever you are, your reflections on what you saw here. Feel free also to start putting things in the chat. And I know you're thinking about this and reflecting, but Sam and I are kind of going to think out loud about this over you as you all reflect, and put some things in the chat if you want. So Sam, I'm curious, what did you observe that now you're reflecting on from what you saw there?
Well, I do think the service seemed very efficient. Kids were eating the food and they moved through the line really quickly. At the same time, I noticed kids wearing their backpacks while eating, and there were kids facing forward with no one to talk to. It made me wonder if we might be sacrificing enjoyment for efficiency, or how we might combine the two a little bit better.
Those are some really great first thoughts. Yeah, I also noticed a lot of instances where I felt like staff can really influence kids' experiences, right? I saw the kid's face light up when he was asked if he needed help, and kids smiling when called by their names or when they were being winked at. I also was thinking about the different packaging of the fruits, and I don't know what to make of that, at this point, but I saw sometimes they were in sandwich bags, and then of course there was like the natural packaging of the banana, and I just started to wonder how kids experience that. So let's go ahead to the next slide now. So now you've observed, you've reflected some, and now is the time, you have the final step here of this tool, contemplating future actions that you might take. So here's when you start to think, did your observation inspire you to want to make any changes to your meal program? Was there a menu change, or did you think, oh, that's a staff training I could have, or some change to the cafeteria environment? So go ahead now out there, wherever you are, take down some notes as you're doing this along with us. Feel free to put any future action, ideas, moments of inspiration in the chat. And Sam and I are going to chat about this too. So Sam, I'm curious, did this inspire anything for you that you might want to experiment with changing?
Yeah, I wondered if there would be a way to experiment with the packaging. Maybe we could try more self-serve options or an all-you-can-eat fruit and veg bar. I can imagine pros and cons to both of those and others, but I think we need to have a pilot of these options to understand what works best for the kids. Similarly, I wondered about a pilot around seating arrangements. As the mother of a 5-year-old, I imagined that kids seated forward helps them focus on eating, but I wonder what it would be like for them to try different seating arrangements.
It's great. I see some people in the chat. Oh yeah, saying some similar things, like seeing someone who couldn't find friends and maybe figuring out different seating arrangements there. I love that. Yeah, I also thought, going back to my observation about the cafeteria staff, I wondered, like, is there a way that we could recognize staff for the ways that they're engaging kids? That there were a lot of really positive behaviors that I could see being called out. In the one case, if one of the women wouldn't have helped that kid with the packaging, I felt like the food would probably never be eaten. So I just wondered, maybe there's some best practices for teachers on lunch duty, or for cafeteria staff for how they engage with kids. There's also a tool actually on the website for introducing cafeteria staff to kids. Did you notice some other?
I was just reading some of the chats and really interesting different things that I hadn't necessarily picked up on. The choice of milk, for instance. I'm curious, what is it like to do this really micro version of this exercise? It obviously we would try to do this over a longer time frame. How did it feel to try it out? Can you imagine using it in some way with your team?
I love the comment here about not only did they help the child, but taught how to open, right? Like you can imagine some of those best practices. Yeah, I love some of these comments coming in. Keep them coming. This is great. And I just want to say that, in your busy everyday workday, we aren't thinking this way. None of us are in any workplace context. This is a time to step back and think with a different mindset. And this is one innovation tool to help you see things in a different way that might inspire innovations and improvements that you can find on the site. And I'm going to turn it back over to Sam to go through just a couple of others before we wrap up today.
Yeah, we wanted to introduce you to 2 more that you could use following something like this. You definitely want to do some interviews and focus groups, probably alongside the learning from observation. So what do we do with all of this information that we've gathered through surveys, focus groups, talking to kids, and other efforts to collect feedback? You could try making sense of learnings and prioritizing. This is kind of a busy slide, but what we have here is a description of the tool that we use. And here are some of the ideas that came up in the chat and in our conversation with my conversation with Holly. Self-serve options, seating arrangements, and staff celebrations. So you've got a lot of good ideas, probably many, many more than just 3, probably 10 to 15, but you can't do them all. And they all have different sort of alignment with the work that you're doing in your district. So this is a framework that you can use to prioritize. You can do this on your own, or you can do it as a part of a team. That's a great way of engaging others in design. So some of the questions that we've put forward here are: how aligned is this idea with the overall priorities of your team? What kind of resources would you need to prototype it, both in terms of financial resources and staff resources and just time? Would you need to, and would you want to work with an outside partner? Thinking through all of these questions can help you design a pilot that is right for you. Next slide. So let's say you piloted some new ways to serve fruits and vegetables. A pretty straightforward effort, but nonetheless something that could be really quite interesting for parents or administrators or other students to understand. Sharing back what you discover over the course of your design journey can help you inspire new allies and increase the impact of your solution. This shows the Share Our Story tool in the guide, and it walks you through how to craft a compelling story that resonates with your different stakeholder groups. And when you're putting together this type of story, make sure that you're elevating the voices of students, team members, and others who helped you come up with this new approach. All right. Well, we zoomed through that really fast, so we do have some time for any questions that you might have. Know that we're just launching this, and we're really excited to find people to work with and hear about your experience just using the guide and adapting it in your context.
And I think our colleague Hannah can chat in the website maybe one more time,
Sure.
so you all can find it yourself here. Yeah. Oh, I love the idea of, you're going to say this, I'm sure too, but having actual teenagers use the tools. It doesn't just have to be employees or staff, right?
Yeah, and in fact, we had a really interesting conversation last week with a group in Virginia that is interested in having the teenagers going out and actually doing the surveying of their friends themselves, which we think could be potentially really, really interesting and insightful, and also, be a way for us to introduce survey methodology at the high school level, which also we think would be beneficial. I also noticed the comment right before there about educators. I think there's a lot of really interesting potential, as you all well know, to tie some of the food choices and menu design to things that the kids are learning in school through various curriculum. And we would welcome any ideas that you all have on that front, but do think that this could be a way for you to start having conversations with those other stakeholder groups around, where are the connection points between the curriculum and the food, and how can you make those things explicit?
Great. We'll just give maybe one more moment if there are any final questions. Otherwise, that'll conclude the session for today.
Yeah, and we are, as I was saying, we are having conversations with different districts. So if you start to use it and find out that you change something, or if you want advice on how to adapt something, please let us know. We are learning alongside you and want this to be as helpful to you all as possible. Yes, Judith, I think you can. That would be fantastic. Yes, I think it is a good. We have to talk to somebody about using feedback from this design process to inform food policy conversations as well. So there's a lot of potential uses for it outside of the cafeteria.
Great. All right. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you all. Please use the design guide. Let us know how it goes for you. And we hope you find it to be useful. Thank you so much for sharing part of your afternoon with us today.
Thank you.